Well, hello there. Welcome to Good Friday. So, have you ever thought that you had already forgiven someone and then found out later on that wasn't exactly true? Something happened, you started to feel re-triggered all over again. All the same feelings of disappointment, anger, betrayal, victimization, hurt, sadness came back. And it left you kind of scratching your head like, I don't get this. I thought I had done this. I thought this was done. I forgave them, but you hadn't. And you had to go in yourself and ask, what's going on? Why am I still stuck in a certain dynamic or situation that I thought I had resolved, that I had let go of? Did that ever happen to you? Have you just plain struggled with forgiveness, period? Like you do not have an easy time of it. You have things in your life right now that maybe you're struggling with when it comes to forgiving. And we've all heard we got to let go and we got to forgive and we got to move on. And forgiveness is the gift you give yourself. You've heard all these, catchphrases and platitudes around forgiveness. I am absolutely sure. And some of it actually is true. Forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. Then you've probably heard, well, forgive, but don't forget. And then maybe feel a little bit of something in there that's got you hooked, even as you feel that in yourself and say that. Forgive, but don't forget. We're going to cover that. And let's look at as well, like, hey, where do we go when something really bad has happened to someone we love or ourselves? And how do we get to a complete, holistic, embodied forgiveness? Well, in this Friday Social Live, that is what I am here tonight to talk all about, is how do you actually go from a state of resentment and holding on and anger and frustration. And then, have you ever done this? Have you ever turned in on yourself with this, I should forgive, but I can't, or I should be out of this, but I'm not, or I should have let this go, but I haven't? The shoulds of forgiveness. We're going to talk about that as well. Now, my aim in this social live that happens to be happening right on Good Friday. I thought it was just synchronicity. It came to me to want to talk to you about this and give you some guidance from my points of view and really help you kind of understand and see exactly what the what true embodied holistic forgiveness is. And I'm calling this mystical forgiveness. We're going to get there. But as I will teach you, forgiveness is a process and journey. We will, in this time together, go on a journey from what I'm going to call more mental levels of forgiveness, which is something you know already, I'm quite sure, into the deeper terrain of forgiveness and what that requires. How do you really, truly forgive? And how do you know? How do you know that you've actually forgiven someone? How do you actually, what's the metric in you that tells you, oh, no, this is over. I've let this go. I have forgiven myself. Let's not forget about self-forgiveness or another or an event or a group. Forgiveness, I mean, we can go all over with where we are stuck with things that have happened to us or relationships that have hurt us. It's not just oftentimes one person. It could be a whole society or a whole culture, depending on who you are. So I'm really, really excited to share with you some new insights, some new perspectives on true forgiveness, mystical forgiveness, and hopefully give you a few tips here on how to get from wherever you're stuck to free at last. Welcome to this Friday Social Live. Mystical forgiveness versus mental forgiveness, where we're going to look at why you're stuck in a certain model of forgiveness and how to move on. Hey, everyone. So this is a live. I'm going to take just a minute to say hi to some of you. I'm going to look at my comments here, and then we're going to get down to it because I've got so much to teach you, so much to say about this topic. Happy Good Friday for those of you who celebrate. I did grow up Catholic, although I would not say that's something I subscribe to now and haven't for quite some time per se, but I do have a deep appreciation for the rites of Christianity and Catholicism in their symbolic form. So I thought it was kind of very fitting to be here. So let's see, we got Zap Time, Renee, Edith Rose, nice to see you. Jill McDonald, Julie Farron, of course, Julie Farron, NYC in the house. Michelle Judge, Lisa Bova, hey Mountain Girl, Peggy Vogt, my German student. All right, we got everyone in the house. I'm really excited. Well, welcome. I'm just going to get situated here. I'm just checking in with my production team as well to make sure everything is okay. Wonderful. Okay, looks like we're ready to rock. So buckle in. Now, I'm going to drink a little. Tonight I always share what I drink on these social lives. It's just what I do. It's a little bit of, Starbucks double shot energy. Because we got stuff to do tonight. I want to tell you, as we begin this, what inspired this, not just Good Friday, actually. There was something else that it kind of all came together in synchronicity. As I was sitting in my office a couple days ago, I wanted to come back to another Friday Social Live. And you may know that my last ones were on Ukraine. And I wanted to pivot a bit out of that because I think I've said all I need to say about that. And I want to move on to some other things that are always, I think anything in the world that's going on is adjacent to whatever I'm teaching. But I wanted to get more personal with you in sort of some inner work together. And I was doing some Q&As. I have a membership. I've got a masterclass called The Empathic Soul and Love Rebel. We just wrapped that up for 2022, and we did a live Q&A in there. And I did a Q&A in my membership recently. And one of the topics that came up was about forgiveness and the role of it. And, a lot of times when I'm doing Q&As, by the way, if you're my student, if you're not going to my Q&As, you are missing out, because that's where the spontaneous, intuitive thing happens. This synchronicity happens where I don't even know what I'm going to say next. It's just like in the moment answers kind of downloading and coming out. And we ended up in some incredible, profound territory in the Q&A that was about forgiveness. And I want to share pieces of that with you. And that's what also truly inspired this. And not to mention, hey, you're in good company. We're all in good company here. There is not one human being alive that I'm aware of that's not struggled with forgiving someone or forgiving something or moving on and getting out of, some trauma, some pain, some betrayal, some victimization of some kind. So one of the things we do need to first bring up as we broach the topic of forgiveness is just that, the victim archetype, the victim in you. Because when we enter into a journey of forgiveness, this is the part of us that is perhaps in many ways initially most involved. Victimization is real. We are all in some ways victimized by many things in life. It's part of being alive. So it's not to make it as if, well, I'm not a victim. People will walk around and say, well, I'm not a victim. And I'll be like, well, we all are. We all are victimized. Now, the pivot is to look at whether we've made being a victim identity. So am I someone who has experienced victimization, or am I a victim as if that's like a noun put on me and that's how I identify? And not only that, my psychology and my psychospirituality and my esteem run on this identity. Because one of the first things you do meet on the road to forgiveness, and I'm going to get into many other layers, is the victim in you. And if the victim in you is really fortified as the way you get esteem, the way you get to your sense of whatever power is, the way that you get to a sense of justice, right? Equilibrium, balance, recompense. Forgiveness is going to be on that ground level already a big challenge. Because in order to forgive, true holistic forgiveness, which we're going to get into, just foreshadowing a few pieces and starting with, the first step, which is meeting your victim. In order to forgive, you do have to find some way in you where you pivot into some neutral orientation to the victimization of life and your experiences of that, which are very real. Forgiveness is not denouncing victimization. It's creating a new relationship to it. And it is also identifying whether you need to be a victim for some reason. And in Ohado's class, we hug dragons, we don't slay them, and we don't should, and we don't perfectionist. We try to just let it all be okay. So if you're someone who's like, I think maybe, I consider myself a victim, and it's a big part of how I get esteem and get power from life and position myself in a way where I'm relevant, or in a way where I am able to control more of life. Okay, welcome to the club. We're all in some orb of this to some degree, and I'm sure maybe you know people. I certainly do, personally in your life, maybe family members, that maybe you've said, God, they're such a victim. Like everything revolves around this identity for them. Everything is a victim story. Everything is life coming at them. Now, what I want you to do is just feel into that part of you and bring that up into what we're up to tonight. You want to be able to go, okay, yeah, that part of me exists. And, the more we can befriend these shadowy bits, the more that we get, conscious choice and a capacity to let all of us belong, because we're already who we are, warts and all. So if you've got a strong victim, okay, let's hug it in. Let's hug it into the circle. And let's now know that seated at the table of forgiveness is this really strong voice in you, this really strong perspective and part of you that has its own esteem system. And you may be very unconscious of how that esteem system is a driver in your life. But hopefully with a little bit of insight tonight, you're going to become more aware. Like, okay, yeah, I get it. I need to have things come to balance, get even. Life needs to be fair. Yeah, let's get into the language of the victim. Fair, unfair, victim words. That shouldn't have happened. This should have happened. Should, shouldn't. Those are also perfectionist words, but victim words in this instance. Why me? Why not me? So, feeling me? This is in us all. Trust me, I'm going to go have a victim moment in about 2 hours. So, you want to join me? We'll have a whiskey and victim toast. You know what I mean? It's not right or wrong. But what I want to bring up first is it's a deep impediment to forgiveness, because the victim doesn't want to have anything to do with forgiveness. They're polarized. Okay. Now, before we go further, now that I've got that on the map and I'm having you feel yourself, read yourself, let's now consider what forgiveness even is. When I say the word forgiveness, what comes up for you? Like, where does that land in you? What kind of things conjure in your mind? Do you consider, when I think of it, just to start us off here so you can maybe find yourself, if you haven't already, when I hear the word forgiveness, I immediately conjure Hollywood movies where there's this character who's been done wrong, and there's that moment, like The Color Purple, where they're confronting their abuser or aggressor, and they declare in some way or other that I choose to forgive you. And then poof, it's like, okay, forgiveness, one and done. Is that something you relate to? Or do you relate to maybe some books you've read on it? Or do you relate to, I kind of also draw in for myself a bit of a religious connotation, because I grew up Catholic, as I just said. And so forgiveness was always part of the teachings of Christ or some of the Catholic rites. And here we are, Good Friday, which is about forgiveness and the crucifixion of Christ. And of course, we all probably can relate to or conjure up, Christ on the cross as saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. His moment of forgiving those who were taking his life, as a profound teaching that, in my view, has not really been adequately interpreted, or rarely adequately interpreted, and certainly not in Christian circles interpreted accurately, as an alchemical process. And just a thread of where we're headed, that's what, to me, forgiveness is. It's a process. Now, if you Google it and look online at a definition, you're going to see something like forgiving. Forgiveness is the result of the process of forgiving. Okay, well, what is forgiving? And then you're going to go deeper and find that it's about, being released of resentments for wrongs done to you, being released of situations or events in which you harbor a sense of woundedness or a sense of disempowerment or a sense of betrayal or transgression, a sense of victimization. That's accurate. I mean, that's accurate in a sense. Now, I want you to consider in your life, I kind of started off with this, a time where you were in the process of forgiving someone. Now, did you wake up one morning and say, I choose to forgive them today? And was it done that quick? Or did what I just say in the beginning happen, where I thought I forgave them, but what the F? I'm triggered all over again. When I was doing intuitive readings, I would see a lot of this cycle that I'm kind of naming here in marriages where there was someone who had committed adultery or cheated on another partner, and they would cycle around in this territory of I forgive you, but then not even the person cheating again, but just something ancillary or something adjacent would trigger them into the overall experience of betrayal from the affair that was eventually found out. And they'd be befuddled, like, well, I thought I forgave you, but I haven't forgiven you because I'm still mad at you and I still want you to suffer. And my victim still wants you to suffer and, do some prison time here in this marriage. So this is about, I always feel like as an intuitive who's a teacher now, right, full time, I'm always teaching you how to read yourself. This is me laying down the read. Like, okay, we're reading forgiveness in you. Historically, present time, and obviously I'm opening doors to hopefully beyond present to future, what's possible. We're in this moment of coming together to explore mystical forgiveness, a new alchemy, a new holistic approach to forgiveness. Now, as you consider where you're at in your life, where you've been in your life, once again, evaluate, what does forgiveness look like for you in the past? Do you have an experience where you can conjure up right now? I know I forgave that person and it held. I really did. I moved on. They moved on. We moved on together. We moved on separately. But I never came back to the territory of the experience that I had to forgive with them. I was able to truly, in my holistic, all of me, move forward. Do you have that at all? I mean, if you would say no, I wouldn't be surprised. And if you would say yes, I'd be like, okay, great. Let's reference and anchor there. And let's get technical together about what was it that you did or didn't do that got you truly in this embodied holistic forgiveness. We need to bottle that up, right? So conversely, if you go back in time and you're like, yeah, I've got a lot of people I thought I forgave, said I forgave. Oh, I chose to forgive. And yeah, I found out that wasn't exactly true. Because I don't know, 6 months later, a year later, 2 weeks later, oh, I was not in a forgiving space with them again. It's like, that's very common. I've been there. I still visit. But I want to share with you what I would consider to be something outside of what I just named, which is, to me, a level of what I've seen as mental forgiveness. So what do I mean by that? It's always so important to, whenever you're in the inner self or in an inner alchemy or in transformation or shadow work or healing of any kind, it's always so important to look at how we've all been acculturated, said another way, programmed, patterned into believing that somehow these real gritty spiritual, psychospiritual, psychological shifts are only contained to our minds. Things like forgiveness. And that's actually not true. We have this illusory perspective around the power of the mind. Now, the mind has power. It has a role, 100%. But it is not the power base of forgiveness. So when someone says, I choose to forgive you, I get suspect right away. I'm like, oh, you choose to forgive, do you? Rather, what I would offer is, no, it's probably more accurate. And I worry because I don't think you're going to get to holistic forgiveness in that model. But what I would say is more accurate is, I choose to begin the process of forgiving you. All right, now we're talking. Because then it's understood that, yes, the mind's role is this. It's becoming aware mentally that we got a forgiveness issue in front of us with somebody. Like there's some, I'm hooked. And yeah, all the platitudes and things you hear about, it's a gift you give yourself. You keep yourself stuck if you don't forget, blah, blah, blah. True. But, and also oftentimes said in a way that is coming through some shadowy shame sort of intention. So yeah, I should forgive. Okay, thanks, shame. But I'll take a minute and get with what's real about where I'm actually at in my process of forgiving, which is this. Maybe I don't want to forgive anybody right now. I'm too angry. The reality is, or yeah, my victim is a big way that I learned to survive my childhood and use it as an adult to get power, esteem, and my whole esteem system set up on being a victim. So I ain't forgiving anyone anytime soon. I'll say I am. I'll choose to, but no, that's actually not that's really not what's true. You know, intuition and being an intuitive adult. By the way, I have a class coming up on that very soon. Stay tuned. Being an intuitive adult is really at a core level just telling yourself badass truths about yourself and others and about life. Intuition is just simply a truth teller in many regards. It's other things as well. But at the baseline, it's just, this is what's true. So take a minute with what I just said and let's review. Do you got something in your life where you're like, I haven't forgiven? And my intuitive antenna goes, okay, well, why? Why haven't you? And then that's where the read begins. So do it with yourself right now. There's something I'm struggling with forgiving. There's something I haven't been able to get over yet. There's something that, maybe it happened today. Maybe it happened when you were a kid. Maybe it and once again, it could be a person, a parent. It could be a group. Maybe you have some forgiveness to work out with the Catholic Church. A lot of us do. We all have something to forgive. I don't know anyone that doesn't, align to that truth or sit in that truth, even if they put up some cover story. So what is yours? And so the why haven't I forgiven? Why did I say I chose to forgive, but it didn't have any power? It didn't have any momentum. I never got past that moment where, like in the Hollywood movie, I choose to forgive. And yeah, I'm still sitting here resenting. And, I wish I had a voodoo doll for this person that I cannot forgive. Stab him right in the heart. Okay. And my point of kind of riffing through here is I want you to identify your mind. Because if you just say, I'm going to choose to forgive, that there's nothing there beyond a recognition you need to forgive. Obviously, you wouldn't say that unless you recognize, hey, I need to forgive a situation. There's something that's got me hooked, or I'm sitting in still. It's a time anchor. Just like trauma, it's a time anchor. I'm anchored in time here. And I time warp around this thing I cannot let go of. And I'll cycle through the underbelly of not forgiving, which is I'll get resentful, I'll get re-triggered, I'll get back to wishing harm on whomever has transgressed me. I will get back to, this sense of this shouldn't have happened. I'll get back to just hanging with my victim. And the victim, by the way, will recruit a team. You get a whole team there. The avenger, revenger might show up. You know, your perfectionist, your shadow judge. Oh yeah, you're going to have a whole team around that victim. And so what we're dealing with now, a whole panel in you that is set against forgiving. But the good news is that there can be another panel in you, a mystical panel in you that says, okay, let's just do a karmic mapping of what we say no to when we say yes to not forgiving. And let's do an intuitive projection of what we would say yes to if we also said, yes, I want to forgive. I'm willing to choose to be in the process of forgiveness. Now, why wouldn't you want to be in the process of forgiveness? I already gave you some clues as to, well, your victim could be running an esteem system around your wounds. And that's all you know. And it's not to make you wrong. It's just all you know. So then the question is, well, you need what other esteem system could come in and replace this? Because that'll have to happen before you can get to the forgiveness path and keep walking down the road and moving forward. So when we're in this human life, and we have to survive, and we have, our inner child has at its core operating this deep fear of abandonment, which is part of how the inner child in you is wired for survival. You're supposed to actually fear abandonment as a kid. You're supposed to anticipate it. You're supposed to find ways to jockey around in your family or your situation when you're younger so that adults are around you to help you survive, because you cannot do that on your own as a child. That is wired in at our biological instinctual level. We are tracking abandonment as kids. So now here comes the next part of you, archetype, that's in play around forgiveness, your child. And so this core part of you is on alert and looking out for, well, who's going to abandon me and how? And one of the things the child will do is it will recruit other patterns, archetypes, like the victim. It sounds crazy. This is the subconscious. This is how we do life as human beings. I haven't gotten to mystical awakening yet. We're on the primal ground level of just how our systems are designed through patterning and this thing called the subconscious mind to survive. It's not right or wrong. It surely oftentimes is not fun when you get to adulthood and you realize, wow, I'm running my whole life around a victim story and it's a esteem system. And I wonder why I cannot forgive anybody. Rather, this is about going, okay, I've got to understand that I've got parts of me that were part of my child archetype, my inner child's abandonment management team. And the victim might just be one of those parts in you. Might be. You've got other, I guarantee you have other ones, and that's part of a course I'm doing soon. But what I want you to understand for now is, hey, this victim in me, it gets esteem. And I don't know if you've ever seen this. Maybe this is actually you. That's cool. But people that have a strong victim their magnetics seem to draw to them more victimization. That would be an accurate assessment. Archetypes in us have certain magnetics. And magnetics just doesn't work on like attracts like, by the way. It also works on opposites attract and many other laws within attraction and within magnetics. So when you see if this is you, hey, I keep drawing to myself more and more transgression, abandonment, betrayal. I'd go, I'm really curious about your magnetics. I'm curious about the archetypes and their magnetic fields. And then I'd throw in soul contracts somewhere in here. Who do you got contracts with to work this out? And how can we shift your magnetics? And then I'm going to go to your child and go, okay, what did you recruit as your abandonment management team And what are the magnetics of your team? And who's, by the way, drawing in all these violations? Now, this is not, hear me. This is not to blame the victim. That is not what I'm saying. That is not it at all. This is rather this. In a deep unconscious, subconscious way, if you have survived by getting esteem through the victim in you, you're going to keep going with that until there's a conscious, and I'm going to say mystical intervention. Not because you're being punished, it's because it's just the laws of magnetics in play, the laws of archetypes and magnetics. It's not that you're right or wrong, good, bad, or worthless, or being smited down by gods at all. We're in an era of being adult co-creators. We got to grow up and actually name our magnetics and not use that as more ammunition to make ourselves wrong, but to understand ourselves as technicians, magnetic technicians. Like, look, yeah, if my survival strategy, this is survival 101, is to get esteem by, you can take this to any archetype, by the way, then I'm going to keep using that until I have another way or another system. That's all it is. So once again, and I have to holistically balance this, because there's people that are also victimized, and this has nothing to do with it at all. Everything I'm saying has nothing to do with it. It's not that those in Ukraine have magnetics that are drawn a war to them or an invasion. It doesn't work. That's not what I'm saying at all. Things have different nuance based on the system in play. That's a whole different discussion. What we're after here is what in you blocks forgiveness. And we've got to talk to your child and your victim and go, okay, what's up? You guys holding hands, hanging out? You part of the same team? And then the question I'd ask you is, how could you relate to victimization in a way that wasn't in some shadow victim perspective, but rather mystical? Now, this is where I want to bring in a couple models through myth, and I do consider Christianity full of myth, not fact. I don't necessarily look at the crucifixion of Jesus personally as something that was completely factual as described in the Bible. I believe it happened, but I believe that there is symbolic weight in there, and also light, that if seen with symbolic eyes, you can receive and learn from and illumine from. Now, not only Christ, but also something that comes from my toolkit of astrology, and that's the archetype and myth of Chiron. Because when you get symbolic, they're the same story, pretty much. Now, the question I just asked was, how do you get to out of this sort of system of victim, inner child, possibly, to something more mystical when it comes to forgiveness? Why is this the bridge anyway? I'm going to switch gears here, and now I have to talk about the difference of in us as being human and being divine souls. On a human level, nothing, and there's nothing right or wrong about anything what I'm saying. It's technical, and it's the truth of our nature. We are in these mortal bodies with these identities and psyches and psychologies and patterns and archetypes and contracts. All true. And beyond that, we exist in a home base, energetic realm that is, if you will, immortal, eternal. Also true. Yet, not eternal from the point of view of nothing ever changes there. Rather, energy never dies. That eternal. Things are changing everywhere, dimension to dimension. Let me be clear. There really isn't energetically some homeostatic heaven where we just hang out happily ever after, or we would not keep reincarnating and growing and dimensionally going on journeys, would we? There is no wheel of karma to get off of per Buddhism. That's the same thing as, for me, the Judeo-Christian heaven and hell. It's just in Buddhist terms. I don't jive with that. It's not, doesn't feel true to me. Never felt true in my readings. There is, though, learning certain lessons and if you will, growing through the karma. And yes, toward enlightenment. But what is enlightenment? Conversation for another time. However, I want to contrast here the human dynamic of you and me and us, which is gritty, scared. Yeah, we're all afraid we're going to be abandoned on some level. Tell me you're not, I'll read you right up. And that's just part of being human. We're messy, we're imperfect, we're vulnerable. You know, we don't live forever. We experience victimization. We experience transgression, aggression. We also can transgress and aggress other people. You know, we sadly are still in an era and time of consciousness where we kill each other through wars. You know, we're worried about paying our bills. We want to be liked. We want to belong. We want to be loved. We're human. And all of that gets to be here, and all of it's beautiful, and all of it's flawsome, and all of it's okay. How do you feel about all that in you? Even your victim gets to be here. Even your addict gets to be here. Even your perfectionist gets a seat at the table of self. I highly recommend you pull out a chair. Because if you send them away from the table, they're just going to come back as a fire-breathing dragon. And then you're going to be in, yes, a shadow victim stance with life, not a mystical one. Now, speaking of mystical, we're also these immortal, evolving souls. We make agreements to come to this planet and experience certain things for our growth, our learning, our lessons, if you will. I guess it's the best language we have here. I don't know if it's exactly translatable to that realm, but I'll roll with it. I'm a teacher. And in this realm, we design experiences that in the human realm suck. Bad. We have soul contracts to have experiences that on a human level, our victim goes, what the F, this shouldn't happen. And our soul goes, but you contracted for it to happen. Now, do you want to get into the alchemy of what it serves in your growth? Or are you going to sit here in a stance with the event that just happened, or the transgression, or the abuse, or the abandonment, or the betrayal? You're going to sit here and go to war with it. Go to war with your own real experience and reality. What are you doing? What do you want to do? You do have choice. You can choose to forgive. You can choose a process of forgiveness. Now, I want to just say from the grit of my own life that what I'm telling you is not something that I haven't lived. I come from, many of you know my story, a very challenging childhood with two alcoholic parents. My father especially was very physically abusive. And I went through a lot of trauma. So, and yet I've struggled with my victim. Oh, trust me. I've struggled with forgiveness. So I'm going to offer myself as a bit of a model for where I want to help you get in yourself so we can anchor a process. So that said, forgiveness is not a choice. The choice rather is, do I choose the process of forgiveness? I think language matters, and I think understanding your system this way will be very helpful. Like, I can choose the process of forgiveness, but I can't just immediately choose to forgive. My mind likes to think that's how it goes. But from what I've seen, that's very rare. And if someone's at the point where they make that choice and it really is a true holistic forgiveness, it's because they've been in process already. And now they're just naming the choice at the tail end of a process. More often, you're in a process, or you're coming to a realization, I need a process of forgiveness because I am stuck. I am anchored. And this, yes, is holding me back. It does not serve me. And I know it. But what's also true is I'm pissed. I'm resentful. I want to get even. Can you let that all be okay? If you cannot let that all be okay, we're not going anywhere. Can you befriend your vengeance? This shouldn't have happened. When I name these things, it's not to make them wrong. It's to bring them into awareness and go, oh, you need a hug. Get over here, vengeance. Come on. So when you're looking at what's got you stuck in your life around where you can and can't forgive, or where you are in a long ass process of forgiveness, and that brings the question, okay, I mentioned process, can it be sped up? Could I teach you something that would help you consolidate and, let's say, alchemize the victimization in a month instead of 2 years? Yes and no. I'll get there. But what I want you to first just explore in yourself is forgiveness as a process, not necessarily a choice point. The choice is I'll get into the process. And then know, as soon as you say, yeah, I'm going to choose the process of forgiveness, okay, the team in you that doesn't want to forgive is going to come right front and center for a conversation. And rightfully so. We want that. How are you going to talk to them? Are you going to bring your shadow judge to your shadow judge? And shadow judge them because they're shadow judging? Your perfectionist to your perfectionist and perfectionist on them because they're being perfectionist? Is what we often do. And we loop and we loop and the conversation goes nowhere and we don't forgive. And actually, let me connect the dot here back to your child archetype. That loop is a form of self-abandonment. Now, hold that thought. Because what I'm doing is I am taking you toward mystical territory. And I want to share with you my story of when I learned, and then I'm going to pull this into Christ and into Chiron, but when I learned that I had been in mental forgiveness and not really holistic, gritty, messy ass, embodied mystical forgiveness. Now, that said, you might think mystical forgiveness, this must mean we're going to meditate and go up into the ether and have communion with Christ or communion with an angel or something, and it's going to cleanse our heart. I'm not saying that. Because when I say mystical, when I say mystic, there's a holism in the way I see these forces that does not separate and transcend from the gritty human level of where we are. It just goes bigger and encompasses it all with a cosmic heart. This is the real meaning of compassion. How much can you encompass of you, of life? Not like it. I didn't say that. Not love it even. I didn't say that. At least not at the human level of how we think of love. How much can you accept, be with, look at, name? Yeah, hug in. You want to know the limits of your compassion? I'm giving you the coordinates and metrics right here. Can you accept and hug in your shadow judge? Can you accept and hug in your victim, your shadow victim? So go through yourself. Can I be with these parts of me or not? And if you can't, that's where we start. We accept that too. All right, I can't. I cannot stand my perfectionist. Can't stand my whiny victim. Can't stand, okay. So let's now pull in a thread from the mystical level of forgiveness. And that is this truth about forgiveness that I've learned personally with clients and with life. Forgiveness is an alchemy so powerful that we as little humans with our wounded human egos and our wounded psychologies and our flossomeness, as I like to call it, we can't pull off forgiveness on our own. You cannot pull off mystical forgiveness on your own. You will need greater power. Hence why it's called mystical forgiveness. Because not only have we included all the messy grit of human life and our trials and tribulations and vicissitudes and suffering and victimizations, and we include it all. It's all here in mystical forgiveness, but we now go big to bigger grids of power, grace. We know, hey, I can't forgive without an infusion of greater power called grace. So when we're only at the level of mental forgiveness, we do not truly, in a holistic way, consult greater power. Because the power I'm talking about, mystical power, would fry the circuits of your mind. And by the time I'm done talking about mystical forgiveness, you probably will be fried because it's so paradoxical. It is ripe with divine paradox. So let me just put something on the map, and then I'm going to take us through the map. When you hear, when we look right now at what's happening in any area of the world, but let's most notably, since it's relevant, just say what's happening in the Ukraine, what happened in Syria, what's happening in China. It's a genocide there. When we look at where human beings are exterminating other human beings or causing horrid harm, a lot of us would go, well, what kind of God would allow that? If there's a God, this is a perennial question in most religious traditions. If there's a God, why does he allow that? That's a question to bring in right here. Because one, we have an orientation to, at a human level, events like this that expects there to be a hero or heroine from the sky. Yet, if I were to say to you, hey, do you call yourself a co-creator? And you're like, oh, totally, man. Big CO on that co-creator. I'd go, okay, well then let's look at war. Because if we're going to look at how a God allows things to happen, let's now get mystical. And if we're going to get mystical, I'm going to have to say, look, all is one, part one. Part two, we're all part of all is one. All right. Part three, the co and co-creator means we all co-create. So if you're asking why God lets things happen, the real question is, why do you? Why do we? We are God. Now, this is where the victim's going to come up. And this is where I'm going to look at you and have watch you have a conversation with your ideas of being a co-creator and your victim stance about the atrocities that happen in life. Not right or wrong, but we're going to watch the dimensional clash of truths. Now, hold that thought. I'm going to take you into me and my journey for a minute. So I was, as I mentioned, abused by my father and my mother, very physically abused by my father growing up. And by the time I got into adulthood and came out as gay, so I had that factor in and the victimization and the homophobic culture in my system, which is profound and very traumatic. And I began to, in my mid-20s, start to try to have committed long-term relationships with, partners. I met someone who was very trustworthy and wonderful, and I could not trust them. Yet, I want to flash back to 16 years old when my dad finally went through rehab, and I went through treatment with him, and I was recounting to the therapist and him all the shit he did to me while he was drunk that he couldn't even remember, including trying to shoot me with a gun. And the therapist looked at me and looked at my dad. My dad's in a puddle of tears, and I'm numb. I'm numbed out. I've been through so much trauma. I'm 16. But in my mind, I was there to forgive him. And my dad apologized to me, and the therapist said, well, how does it make you feel? I said, I don't feel anything. I literally don't feel anything. But you know what? I forgive you. I forgive you. And so I believed I'd forgiven my father. He got sober and maintained his sobriety for 5 years before he committed suicide. But I went on into my 20s. And as I began to try to have relationships, I realized that, okay, I think I forgave my dad, but I'll tell you what, every time I'm struggling with trust issues or the fact that I get neurotic about abandonment, I get mad at my dad. I get really mad because I can't trust others because of what you did to me as a kid. I can't. My system can't even begin, right? So one night after an argument with my partner around trust, I went to sleep, and my father had already passed, and he came to me, and this wasn't a dream. This was a meeting in the energy realm. And in this state, my father was there, and I start cussing him out. I am like, I can't trust anybody. I go off on this tirade, and he's just standing there in this countenance of just, I would describe as peace. He's just listening and listening. And then he says to me, everything I did to you, I did for you. And in that moment, this white energy flushed over me and him. And I began to remember our soul contract. I began to remember the agreements we made. And it was mystical levels of soul contract truth that I was being downloaded with in this state, in this space with him. And I felt the same peace flow right through me that he was already standing in. And I looked at him and I said, you're right. We agreed to this. And I woke up out of that state, tears everywhere, streaming down my face. And then this is what I want to offer you. That for me was my pivot point from mental forgiveness, which I had down. Oh, I forgive you. I choose to forgive you, to a beginning process. And I got to stress this, of mystical forgiveness. I realized that the road ahead was going to require the same things I'm teaching you right here. A dialogue with my inner child, my abused, wounded inner child, a dialogue with my victim. And the whole team, these parts of me had amassed. And I would share with you, that's a dialogue that's still going till this day. But I would also share with you that as I progressed out of that experience, I didn't immediately forgive him, or my trust issues weren't immediately healed. That is not how this works, people. Not nearly as I can tell. But what I did have, I had a mystical true north. I had a mystical experience that anchored my mystical true north. Now, I got to pause button this for a sec, because I would imagine, because I've heard this before, I've told the story before, not in this context, but I would imagine you might be going, well, excuse me, but fuck that. You know what I went through as a kid? And I would totally understand that. I would understand that position. You know what other kids go through? How about those who are incested? How about, you don't think I went through something like that? You don't think I went through other things? Now, I only say that to meet you in equality in our wounding, if you will, so I can offer in a genuine way a perspective that you can take or leave. But rather, I don't say this from theory. I'm not talking from, set yourself free forgiveness and platitudes. I'm talking from the grit of what forgiveness as a process actually is. And from someone who's walked this road, still walks this road. And I can share with you, you get further down and you do move on. So I went through therapy, spiritual direction, for at least a decade before I came to a place of, and this is the key to knowing whether you've truly forgiven, a place of neutrality. With my history, my past, and my abuse with my father, as the example I'm in right now. And so when we get to this place, now let's flash back to where I just was a minute ago. I want to spend a little more time here, where we're like, no, that just, what they did to me is unforgivable. And yet, did I just hear you say you want to forgive? I'm not sure I'm tracking. And neither are you. You're in conflict. The piece is this. We, on a soul level, And this doesn't opt us out of giving a shit. Let me be clear. And this doesn't mean everything's fated. I got to put these caveats in as I say this statement. And I'll speak from my own truth. On a soul level, I had chosen those experiences with my father. I can't say for sure I chose all of them. Some of them were flowcharts. But I know some of them were not. And I know that as a truth because I had the download in an energetic state out of my body. As a truth. You have chosen in your soul agreement certain situations and experience that really, honestly, on a human level, may be absolutely horrific. I would not call it anything else. They're horrific, period. What I went through as a child was horrific, period. Yes, and we now have to together sit down at this crossroads and go, well, do you want to forgive this or not? You can both name it as horrific and forgive it, actually. Who knew? And forgiving it is a process. It might take you a long time. Let me ask you a question. How long do you think people should get through grief? Would you ever go up to someone who just lost someone who died, especially in a tragic way, and say, you got 3 months, get over your grief. It should only take you 3 months for this one. That's preposterous. You would never say that to someone, I have to imagine. I certainly would not. My point is this. Things like grief, forgiveness, creative depression, not clinical, creative depression, things like a dark night of the ego. You don't necessarily get to just decide with your mind. This is done in 3 months. There's an organicity to it. There is so much in the unconscious of you that you have to befriend and heal and love. And that might take 5 years. That might take a decade. That might never fully realize in this lifetime. Can you be okay with that? That might take a week. Someone might grieve someone, and this is the other side of it. They're over it. They're through it. I don't think you're really in grief. You're never over. I'm never over the fact my dad committed suicide. I carry it every day, but not as a grief burden, but as part of my journey. I'll always miss him, and we had a really wonderful 5 years after he got sober. We healed, thank God. So forgiveness, similarly, it's not like I'm going to put it on my calendar, done by March, spring's coming. I would not recommend you approach it that way. I would approach it unconditionally and approach it from a point of view of however long it takes. I am here for the process, however long it takes. What I just gave you is I got you out of your mind. Your mind wants it on the schedule, wants it done. You want mental forgiveness? Go for it. Because I can pretty much assure you, you're not going anywhere. You'll loop around in the fantasy, an illusion that you've forgiven. But all it's going to take is another betrayal or your magnetics to draw in a similar one because you haven't integrated the lesson. You haven't integrated whatever this was meant to serve for you. So now, what I had in my experience was that mystical anchor. Now I'm going to turn to myth. I'm going to go to Chiron for a minute. In mythology, and let me qualify the power of mythology. Mythology has been the way that we as human beings have come to understand the creative laws on Earth, the creative cycles of life, and the creative laws of cycles, the archetypal fate of this energetic realm of Earth School. Mythology is that kind of spontaneous out of the human psyche, and oftentimes, yes, in astrology, projected onto the sky or planets in synchronicity, is a way to understand our contracts with these laws, our contracts with these cycles, our contracts with the way the human psyche itself is psycho-spiritually engineered and structured and evolves. Inside of us exists a force that the Greeks and next Romans, as they adopted their mythologies, called Chiron. This is a new emerging force in this new Aquarian era that I'm beginning to realize is the era of the intuitive adult, in part. And on the journey to becoming a spiritually mature, intuitive, co-creative adult, what's necessitated is that you understand the Chiron in you. Chiron was half horse. He was a centaur, half horse, half man shaped, but moreover, he was half mortal and immortal. And it was the way that I feel the Greeks at the time and the Romans made sense of our dualism this way. We're these souls in these human temporary mortal bodies as we define mortality. And yet we're also these immortal beings. Both are true. Both and. And both and becomes the foundation of Chiron medicine. Living in both and. Now, in a world, if we went to your victim archetype sees life through either or. You're either good or bad. You're coming at me or you're going to help me. You're either friend or foe. Which is it? And in fact, our culture overall mostly sees through this lens because we live in a very activated, victimization-based culture. That's why we're so litigious. What? You spit on me? Well, I got to sue you now. What? You want a divorce? Well, here goes War of the Roses. So, am I telling the truth or what? Now, back to Chiron and you, Chiron and us. There's so much to this force. I have to take one sliver off for this, how I want it to serve this teaching. Just know there's so much more. But what I want to bring in is, let's just position it this way. Chiron had both a mortal and immortal heart, a human heart and a cosmic heart. Now, we oftentimes just say the heart, but me being a linguist and technician, I like to get specific. I like specificity. I like to understand the technical systems of who we are from all levels, holistically, from the mystical level to the most psychological level, which is where my expertise is. I'm not a medical intuitive. I know a little. I can dabble. I can get some things. I never claim that skill. Like my colleague Carolyn Mace, who is brilliant. But if you want to read on your psyche, your patterns around you, other people, your archetypes, I'm your guy. If you want an understanding of your soul contract, call me up. I read it like a book. And I will tell you, in your contract, you have a clause that says, I am now under contract to evolve through Chiron consciousness, my individual identity in this life. That means to say, you've got to find a way to move into a both and. Both in your chest needs to be a human and cosmic heart. The human heart, generally speaking, can't forgive. It's based in a sense of either or, right, wrong, fair, unfair. Now, I'm not making this right or wrong. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't have standards of justice. Don't mistake me. I'm talking about forgiveness. I'm talking about by the time you got something to forgive, it's because an event's already happened in your experience that needs forgiving. I'm not going in the broad social fabric here and trying to adjudicate and balance out the difference between the human heart and cosmic heart at the level of justice when it comes to law and order. That's not what I'm saying. And I would actually say, if you're interested in forgiveness, that probably isn't helpful either, because forgiveness is about you and your soul. And you and I have been taught that it's about us and our mind. No, it ain't. The mind matters. It begins the process, like I said, of awareness. I got to get into a forgiveness process. Now, what is the forgiveness process What is it really? It's the journey from the human to the cosmic heart. And in Chiron's myth, that's exactly one way to look at his journey, and an accurate one. Because Chiron suffers a victim experience. He's the centaur. Most of the other centaurs at that time were unruly and were causing problems. So him and Hercules team up and like, we got to get man and centaurs to get along. You in on this, brother? Let's collaborate. Let's get these two folks to come together and stop these wars. So they broker a truce and bring everyone to the table, and Chiron's got the centaurs and Hercules has men, and they're having this chat, and suddenly, a war breaks out anyway. So Hercules is getting into it, and he just had slain the Hydra and gotten all the blood from the Hydra and dipped his arrows in the spears of his arrows in the blood and was shooting out arrows, and he accidentally, keyword, accidentally shoots Chiron in the leg. This is an incurable poison from, let me just get symbolic and translate at the same time, from the deepest toxic part of the shadow, shot right into the mortal part of Chiron. So the mortal part of him is infected with the poison. There's no cure, trying to die. And the immortal part of him won't let die because it's immortal. And now he is, if you will, in the embodiment of what we would call our general journey of human suffering. We suffer, we're mortal. And this, as a side shoot, I'm not going down this path tonight, is where the wounded healer pattern comes from. Because what Chiron does is he begins to go seek how to heal himself. He was already a healer. He learned from Apollo. But he can't find the medicine. He tries all these different things out. Some help a little, some less. But you know what he does do? Is the medicine he experiments with on his journey of healing himself, which he's not successful at ultimately, becomes the medicine that heals everyone else. There's your wounded healer. Now, comes down to it, Chiron finally has a chat with his victim. I'm gonna translate this. And goes, this is an eternal state of agony. So I'm going to need to just give up my mortality or my immortality and just go to Hades. I want to be done with this. Just go to the underworld. And he goes to Hercules and says, look, you got me into this. I know you didn't mean to. It was an accident. But I'm still the victim. I was still victimized. I still received the poison. So I'm going to ask you to go ask Zeus, your father, to broker a deal to let me go to Hades and just completely die. Because I got nothing else for this. Now I'm going to translate this into terms of forgiveness. What Chiron says is, I want to forgive this. I want to let it go. I want to move on. Even if it's the underworld, I don't care. I just want to move on. So Hercules goes to his father and says, hey, Chiron wants to go to Hades. Can you help a brother out? Can you help your son out? I'm kind of part of this. And Zeus goes, okay. Really? He's going to give up his immortality though? Really? All right, though. So Chiron does go to Hades very briefly. Because Zeus is like, I don't think he's really doing this. I mean, I'll let him, but... So Chiron goes to Hades, and Zeus is just so like, you're a god. You're half god. You gave up your immortal side to die. And then he says, you know what? I'm giving you full immortality. And this is where we get the constellation Centaurus. So in this story, that's not a story. There's so much in there about forgiveness. Now, I'm going to parallel this to Christ, and then I'm going to recap both together. Christ, very similarly, Son of God, half man, half mortal, half immortal. Do you think the Christians were the first to come across this mythic pattern? No, it'd been around a long time, well before Christ. So Christ comes in, Son of God, half mortal, half immortal, has to sacrifice what? His mortality for what? True ascension and everlasting life. How does it happen? Through betrayal. And yet Pontius Pilate was like, I don't want to do this to you. Save yourself. What the F, man? I don't want to hang you up here. You've done nothing. Save yourself. And then, of course, the big moment when he's on the cross dying, Father, forgive them for they know what they do, is him saying, look, here's what I'm showing you all humans. When you're in a human ego, when you're in a wounded human ego, most notably, you will go through a crucifixion just like I am right now. And at that moment, your choice is going to be, do you somehow find a cosmic, mystical footing in your circumstances so that you can holistically, mystically forgive or not? Do you do that? Do you have an experience when you're 25 where your father meets you and shows you that you agreed to your experiences with him? That gives you a true north, mystical true north to forgive and start your journey. Do you get on the path of my mind, my human victim patterned mind cannot understand the logic of this experience and these events from any standpoint that is on this dimensional realm of survival? I'm going to have to take a cosmic true north to understand, even if I can, why this experience is happening right now or has happened. Chiron says to life, hey, this wound, this sacred wound, it's a sacred wound. I can't heal it. I've tried. So I accept it on its terms, and I'm willing to die. Let's translate. I can't have what's happened to me be anything other than what it actually is. A wounding violation that hurts. So I'm just going to surrender to that's what it may always be. I may always hurt from this wound. Now here's the divine forgiveness paradox. When you get to the place in yourself where you can say, I may never forgive this person. I may never forgive this experience. I may never arrive at some kind of holistic sense of healing out of it. It just might be what's true, and I surrender, I give it up. That, my friends, is the first step to the healing and the forgiving. You have to, in a sense, befriend your own system and what it's generating. And if it's resentment, if it's vengeance, then that's what it's generating. You think your mind can wrangle that away? It's like Buddhists saying, hey, you can't mess with monkey mind. You focus on the monkey, you just get more monkey mind. You have to just be like, look, it is what it is. This happened to me at some point. And I'm not saying that is a mental feat. I personally know that's not true. You have to go through gritty ass emotional depths and shadow territory and low esteem and all that comes with the process of forgiving someone, which is why we'd rather have the mental version, the bypass. And that's what it actually is. I don't want to have to feel the worthlessness I actually do feel because of how being abused or violated imprinted me. I want to feel that. And I look at you as your spiritual director and go, well, if you don't feel it, you can't move through it. It's not true about you. You have soul esteem. You're always enough. You've always been enough. You'll always be enough. Nothing ever takes that away. But we have to feel this through. Chiron felt it through for a long time before he got to his surrender point. A long time. So this is what's required in mystical forgiveness. One, it's a process. It's gritty. All your feelings are okay. They get to be here, and you actually feel them. You don't jump to your head and should or shouldn't them out. You stand in yourself. You go. You know what's true? I want to just reap vengeance on this situation for what it's done to me, or these people, or this person, or my heart's broken. How could they? Whatever's genuine and what you really feel. And I'd ask you in your forgiveness process, if you feel stuck, have you let yourself go there? Unconditionally, by the way. Not like, okay, I got 5 minutes with it and then I'm done. I want you to trust something from my own experience. The more that you just let the process happen, you really will get through it. You get out of your own way. You know, you enter this new space of perspective. Like Chiron in the heavens as a constellation looking down on it all. Like, oh, I see it all now. Okay. Or Christ having his moment of realization. Oh, they don't know what they're doing. This was all set up this way. I'm here to gift humanity with a model of how to go into a multi-sensory understanding of co-creation and how to work with the wounded human ego as part of that process. You'll always be on a cross for something. You know, maybe mild to very severe, but something. And that's just fine. That's not the issue. The issue is, do you let yourself ascend? Resurrect? Do you actually let it all go and go, hey, this was the package that I needed to wake up to whatever my contract asks of me? And let me say it another way, because this to me is where it lands here. This is the package I needed. This victimizing experience, this abuse experience, this whatever it is, to come to know the mystical, intuitive, cosmic heart and connect it while I'm in this body to my human one. What I saw in that moment with my dad was that who I was meant to become, the me talking to you right now, could not have happened without what I went through. And I can't say that's true for everybody. I can say it's true for me. And maybe you find your truth in that. I wouldn't be the compassionate teacher I am. I wouldn't understand how to care about people. I wouldn't understand what it means to be marginalized and victimized if I weren't gay. I wouldn't understand and have some empathic road into what it must feel like to be a minority in a dominant white culture or a woman in a patriarchy. There are so many touch points of compassionate and empathic connection that came out of everything I went through. And I'll tell you something else that I'll cover in my podcast this summer as one of the foundational reasons why I became so hyper intuitive, or allowed rather that to connect and grow in me, was as a kid, I was reading my environment 24/7, projecting energy ahead of even coming home from school to my home. What am I stepping into? Now, I didn't say that when I was that young. I see it now. You may never know the reasons why things happen as they do, and likely won't know all of them. And I don't even know if you need to know them to forgive, actually. I was given a moment of mystical revelation that allowed me to know a lot, but not everything. And it certainly didn't mean I woke up the next morning healed. Like I said, I've had 10 years of therapy since then, or after that. And, you know, and I would never say, like Chiron, I would never say I'm fully healed. I'm not the hubristic. I understand the nature of the sacred wound. It's to keep you ever connected and mindful of what's necessary to be yoked into a cosmic heart. So one other way to frame this, and I'm going to wind it down and anchor, is that forgiveness is really the journey of the dark night of the ego. And I would get more specific and say the wounded human ego, because I'm not an ego basher. I think we need egos. We need healthy ones. We need ones that have mystical juju up in them. We need to understand. We need identity in this life. That's what your ego is. No one's getting rid of their ego. Those saying it seem to be tripping all over their own. I mean, it's here to stay. Can you befriend it? Can you come to work with it mystically, soulfully? Absolutely. But you can't do that if you think you're getting rid of it. So let me be clear about the ego. But the wounded ego can be a beast because it has adaptations in it that usually, for us personally, sabotage us when we employ those systems. And secondly, do a lot of damage in the world to others as well. Now, what I just said is actually a Chiron perspective. I'm looking at things from above, like, whoa, this, as they say, hurt people hurt people. And what do you do with truths like that? Well, you can truly get pissed about the hurt you get and feel all the feelings about it. Yeah, do that. I want you to do that. You need to do that for gutty, holistic, mystical forgiveness. And that can be your mystical true north. They did that to me because someone did that to them. Okay. Now, what did I say earlier? You're not mystically forgiving without higher power. So I'm going to say pray it up, soul prayer it. But you can't soul prayer, ask for power, where you keep acting like you have it already. So if you sit in your head with mental forgiveness, oh, I have the power to forgive. Your inner sabotage team's like, oh, really? Okay. You don't understand how powerful we are in your psyche. You don't understand how we are the ones that helped you survive the first, 10, 20 years of your life, and maybe still. So give it a go. You think you can forgive? We're the only power you know. And then your mind's like, yeah, I got the power. And then I think what Christ showed us was he could have at any time, according to the myth, pivoted out of that crucifixion, saved himself, renounced the charges somehow. And Pontius Pilate probably would let him go. But instead, he went, no. Mm-mm. This is the path. And what he's saying is, you're going to have to sacrifice this human wounded level of fair, unfair, justice, blah, 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 for something greater, mystically greater. Can you do that? And there's no right or wrong, and there's no should or shouldn't here. There's just what's true. And it's what's true that gets you through to mystical forgiveness. So what's true is your own power can't pull off genuine, gutty, gritty, holistic forgiveness. It can't. I promise you it cannot. I've never seen someone through their own power pull it off. I've seen people access, plug into higher, greater, cosmic grids of love and power, and that really begin to move the rest. And yeah, that's yoked to your messy human forgiveness process, both and. Both and. Now, I want to ground this in another example and then let you ruminate on everything I'm sharing. So, one of the reasons why a lot of common approaches to forgiveness really don't work is because they only stay in this mental space. It doesn't drop in. You don't drop into what you feel about what you've been through. The victim in you is not right, wrong, good, or bad. It's actually a necessary intuitive force that says, look, this ain't fun. Don't let yourself get victimized again. Instead, next time, stand up this way. Recruit this force in yourself to advocate, or borrow from someone else's knight or warrior and have them help fight and protect you. Something. But don't let this happen again. Your victim's the one that coordinates that. Hallelujah. Once again, it's rather, now do you identify as a victim? I've been in many recovery circles, and now I'd have to honestly say, I'm not so sure how I feel about people 5 years into a healing process sitting in a circle, naming themselves through their victim experience. I think that's essential in the beginning. Hey, yeah, I'm a survivor of child abuse. Hey, yeah, I'm a survivor of incest. Or I'm a victim of incest, or I'm a victim of child abuse. But when do we become something more? You guys start there. Don't get me wrong. Just riffing around with some questions. But what I want to bring forward here is that as a process of forgiveness, this means it could take time. So I think the next organic question is, well, how do I know, Robert, that I've progressed to some space where I've actually forgiven. I thought I forgave before, and yeah, I didn't really. It's a great question. And in my I think more recent life experience, I had someone about 10 years ago that I really struggled forgiving for a while. And it wasn't necessarily like I'd been really done wrong or anything like that. It was just more, I think what I was trying to forgive was the circumstances and situation of our relationship. And some transgressions that I felt and power plays and stuff that were part of that, but also that it couldn't have been different. I wish it had been different. And I couldn't forgive somewhat them, but also the circumstances both. And I would get to a point year or two later, another year or two later, where I'd be like, oh, I think I'm in a good place now. And then something would flare up and I'd be like, oh yeah, I guess not. Because I'm back in some resentment or just some, I just, can something fall on their head, kind of, I'm owning it. And then there came a time, maybe 6 years after, where I was like, I think I'm neutral. And then that cycled back a year later to, no, I'm not. Now we're 7 years. And then there came a time 8 years after where I was like, I think I'm neutral. 9 years, I'm still neutral. 10 years, God, I just miss them. I wish them the best. I'm so happy for having had them in my life, the growth I went through, the lessons we learned. I hope they learned what they needed to. That's true. That's when you know. I think you feel a genuine sense, not only of neutrality, but maybe even perhaps gratitude. Like, I don't need to make them wrong. I'm not wrong either. We're human. We're flawsome. We're effed up. We're perfect in an effed up way. Yay. And you get to that place where it's like, no, I'm steady. This is steady. This feels steady. That's when you know. When there's not a fire in the belly, that's how it would feel to me. Or, and then the heart would start to come in and the sadness and then the other feelings of, I wish it could have been different, or, I really miss that, or I miss what I can't let go of what we could have been, what could have happened, what we could have done together. And when you finally go, okay, well, it just wasn't meant to be. But what was meant to be was who I am today. That's when I think you really start to center into that. Now, coming down my little bullet list here as we close down, how long does it take to forgive someone or something? I have no idea, because it's going to vary. There genuinely are people that can forgive immediately. I'm not saying that isn't a phenomenon or a possibility. I would just say that's not done with their mind. Their whole system has to be on board, or it's not going to stick. But that can happen. Like I said, usually there's a process leading up to it where they finally language what their system's been doing the whole time. Now, I wouldn't get too conditional about timing. I'd stay in the process and trust that, hey, timing will take care of itself, because it absolutely will. And I would offer, I don't think you have control over that. If you have any control, it's like Chiron. The control I have is just to accept that I can't control it, and then I maybe get some control. Mystical paradox. But there has to be a full acceptance and surrender to what is, or the forgiveness alchemy cannot achieve that mystical, holistic level of shift. It's just technical. Now, how to spot fake forgiveness in yourself and others, because others, I'm sure it's not. Hey, you've probably transgressed people. I have. You think we are the only ones doing the forgiving around here? So yeah, I mean, when do you in a fake forgiveness? Well, I just say, well, if it's up here and hasn't dropped anywhere below, look alive. If you don't feel it really deep, and I mean in the gritty part of your human heart, reaching out to get a transfusion from the cosmic heart, you don't feel it there, probably fake. Fake meaning it's not genuine, it's not complete, it's not holistic, it's surface, it's mental. If you're just in your head about it, I'd call it out. I think it's the mental forgiveness Robert's been talking about. Okay, Get curious about it then. We're not judging that. We also know it's not going to get traction, generally speaking. It can be a door in to traction if you understand, hey, let me use my mind to choose the process of forgiveness and even more, recruit my heart into an actual bona fide intention to engage the process of forgiveness. You got to drop into intention. Your mind is just a little networker. But intention's deeper than your mind. So, all right, I'm going to drop into intentionality. And then when you drop in intentionality, really the next thing out of your mouth, as far as I'm concerned, is a prayer. To the cosmic heart, I say this prayer. It's my intention to forgive this person. I know it's going to be a journey of some kind, gritty, messy, probably, yeah. And I unconditionally avail myself to that. And so, all right, let's do this. Ooh, you're on your way. Now, fake forgiveness from other people. You want to be mindful of this because if someone's forgiven you, but not really, that's going to come back to bite you. And it's not to confront them in the fake aspects, but rather understand for your own shadow dancing and positioning with them. Oh, they think they've forgiven me, but they haven't. And just hold space for it as best you can. Trust you'll get guided in their process on how to support a dropping in to something deeper, a dropping into the journey of deeper forgiveness, if that's even scheduled. Now, what if there's something in your life you just cannot forgive? I'm just going to say, okay, I'm okay with that. Are you? Can you be okay with that? There might be things in your life you'll never forgive. I don't know. Can that be okay? Now back to Chiron. If you can let it be okay, that's your first chance of forgiving it. But it has to be genuine. You can't use your mind, well, I'm going to let it be okay, but I'm not really okay with it. It's got to be, no, full on. This doesn't, hey, Chiron, hey, this wound will never heal. I get it. I'll never forgive. So, and what Chiron showed was that what happened to him was completely impersonal. There was no malintent from Hercules' bow into his leg with that poisoned arrow. It was an accident. Now. When you take a journey up and expand out into the cosmic heart, what I saw, what you would probably see. And this is the paradox. You got to hang out in it. You don't have to, but if you want, to pick up what I'm putting down, you do. It's this paradox of, you know what my father did to me as a kid, and also the way he emasculated me for being gay, and he knew I was gay, and the way he made fun of when I had a lisp and when I was younger, that wasn't personal. That was culture mixing with his own pain and the challenges he was having with my mother at the time, and how he, in his limited capacities, was dealing with it. And he took it out on me. And I know that to be true with everything that I am. But I'll tell you what, it felt fucking personal. It felt really personal. And it still can feel very personal. And that's why I say it's a process. And not personal with me and my dad, but when others that carry the same intent to harm me come for me, or seek to hurt, harm, or disempower me, that feels personal, at least initially. So your wounds, transgressions, your victim experiences are both and. I guarantee you 100% they are. They're personal because they affect you. They've hurt you. They've ruptured your holism. They have violated your holism. Of course they're personal. Let them be personal. It's okay. They get to be personal because they are personal, and they're not. They're part of a bigger karmic momentum of pain, perhaps, or legacy in family generations or culture that has nothing at all to do with your soul. Because you know what? At that level, you're enough no matter what. Your value is intrinsic. All of ours is actually, by the way. Everyone got their passport stamp to come here. We're all worthy of being alive. It's a hard thing to say when you look at some dark peeps in the world these days, but it's true. So, can you explore the personal and impersonal nature of your victim experiences, of that which you feel a need to forgive? That's huge. And if you can, with curiosity and compassion, and that means, hey, I get to be pissed about some stuff here. I get to have my moments where I want to tell God, go F yourself. Or my soul, really? You chose this crap? Really? This family? This culture? Really? I feel you. Trust me. And yeah, really. Really. So life just looks at you and goes, okay. Yeah, really. And what do you want to do about it? What's your pivot from here? Can you forgive? And that's a question you cannot answer. You don't know if you can forgive or not. But you can say, I don't know, but I'm willing to try. I'm willing to try. So how do you apply mystical forgiveness to yourself? Hello, let's not forget the self-forgiveness each of us daily probably needs to engage. I think at the core of forgiving others is forgiving yourself. It's having a system. Think about it as a forgiveness system and process. I have a self-forgiveness system. I also, as a teacher, I teach, hey, have a shadow process, have a shadow system. These are self-systems, and they're systems of self-connection. So self-forgiveness is about really this. I'm going to give myself permission to stay connected to me, even though I've done some shit. I've hurt some people, including me. I've gotten up into some really egregious self-sabotage on the daily, for over a decade. Whatever it is. And I still get to be with me. I still get permission to connect to myself, no matter what. What do you think unconditional love means? Unconditional love. No conditions. Connect to me no matter what. So what self-forgiveness is, it's part of a self-connection system that says, look, yeah, I've done some shit. And I'm accountable. We're here to learn from karma. We're here to learn from our karmic balance sheets. We're accountable. You're not opted out of that. The difference and shift is that I can still stay connected to me and be accountable. I can still stay connected to be accountable and not make myself wrong or shame myself. Yeah, both and. Accountability isn't why it's time to pile on a whole shadow judge evaluation of myself and then take that to trial. No, that's disconnecting. So self-forgiveness is simply for me, and not so simple. Hey, you know what? In compassion to, not in spite of, notice the language. In compassion to my choices, I'm going to encompass all my choices. In compassion to those whom I've hurt, I'm going to encompass those actions and choices that have hurt people. In compassion to my own pain that led to me hurting others because I didn't have any other way to move in the world and feel empowered or feel worthy or feel safe. In compassion to that and more. I could go on. I'm going to call on greater power, because I know I'm not pulling this off on my own, to aid me in a process of self-forgiveness that allows me to stay connected to myself no matter what. And what you don't realize is in saying that prayer and orienting and naming all I just did, you just immediately connected to you. It's happened. It's there. Done. And then you give yourself permission to say, okay, I'm connected to me. I like this. You know, all of me gets to be here. Okay, this is going to be a practice because I don't like certain parts that are here. And as your guide, I go, like, you don't have to like them. It's fine. No worries. You may never like any of them that you don't like right now. So let's not make that the goal. Let's just encompass, hug them in. Let's bring more love. And I don't mean romantic Hollywood. I'm talking cosmic levels of your mind can't even take it love because it fries the circuits. And bring that in and say, look, this is the new juice to my system. And I sense deeply that foundation, that practice in you is going to just catapult other areas where forgiveness is needed in your life with others outside of the self. So it is a both and system, inner and outer, and it is never done. I just had to kind of do some self-forgiveness today around some choices I made that I felt were a little sabotaging for me. And it's not easy, you know, but it gets easier and becomes the new norm. It's a tricky thing. This is why I say mystical, because mystical gets out of our human either or patterned mind. And it gets us into this both and we get to just kind of almost play around there and be like, oh, wow, what's the both and of me? What's the both and of this experience? What's the both and of about my, you know, my need to forgive? Or so applying mystical forgiveness to yourself means sometimes I did this today. You got to call on a greater power. Look, I can't, I don't have the power, let alone compassion to forgive myself today. So bring it, angels. Done. They're working with you immediately. You know, that's what I mean. I want you to do this. It's a lot to consider. I mean, actually preparing for this made me realize, and I probably will do this, to be honest, at some stage. I want to do a course on this because there's so much more. I've given you a lot of the what, but not so much of the how, because we don't have time and, you know, it's just too big. But I think this demands at some point more of the how. And hopefully I've given you some pieces of that anyway, that you can kind of start experimenting with. Be an experimentalist, not a perfectionist. You can blow up the laboratory. It's fine, really. The forgiveness laboratory can explode a few times as you try to mix in the right, combination of alchemical agents together to turn this lead to gold. Remember, you're not the lead or the gold. You're the alchemist. But I digress. And this is about, all right, I'm going to play with these things in myself. I'm going to watch myself. I'm going to intuitively read myself from here. Where am I at? What can't I forgive and why? I'd always start there. That's the beginning of the read. So much love for you. I think at this time in where we are in the world, in our lives, and certainly in a shame-based culture, which we've all been born into, this is essential. Getting to some shame-free zone where we can engage our rough, victimized bits and begin to understand a different path forward of mystical holism with this, I think is really, really key. And if we could snap to the truths, the soul truths of us, that's where we would, and of life, of all things, that's where we would actually see, and it's just what's true there. I'm not saying it's how we experience the truth here. We would see that nothing was ever personal. And in a sense, then, there's nothing to forgive at all. And there's your divine mystical paradox. But you can't travel there with your mind. You can get there, but you're going to go, my experience, what I've seen, you have to go through your holistic system of everything below your head your shattered human broken heart, your pissed off, fists, your, your churning, low esteem having stomach. You got to drop in and then bring light, and then bring light. So I'm gonna say goodbye to all of you since it's alive. I feel like I'm in the zone of just. So how's everyone doing? Any quick questions before we close up on this live? Oh, thank you, Renee. Thank you, Peggy. I can't believe you're still awake. Louise Martin. All right, Leslie Harding. Thanks, Paul. Paul Seagraves, I see you. Yeah, play with it. This is not a complete, I want to just stress this was not a complete model, because this was some insights, hopefully helpful ones. There's more of a model I can sense that I could pull out of this at some stage in a course, but wonderful. Wendy Ellsworth, great to see you. Lori King, my astrology sister, what's up? All right, Catherine Dress. Okay, well, I don't see any questions yet. Very helpful. Yeah, I hope it helps, really. And just what is the new class? Okay, new class, everyone. I'll announce that real quick. I'm doing a class on mace.com. I'm coming back to mace.com for a brand new course that is going to be phenomenal. I'm working on the copy right now. I've got the lessons I'm planning the lessons right now. And the whole premise of this, let's give you the premise before I give you the actual title, because I'm still dialing that in, but I'll give you the preliminary title. Why not? So the preliminary title is The Intuitive Adult, Mystically Self-Parenting Your Inner Multisensory Child. And actually, there will be a segment on forgiveness with your parents in this course. That's why I also was inspired to do this as well. So if you have parental forgiveness issues, I hope you'll join me. It starts, I believe, May 10th, and it's Tuesdays and Thursdays through May. So just I'll be obviously launching it, announcing it in the next week or so. It'll be on mace.com by the end of next week. And as always, there's a discount for the launch, so you'll want to sign up sooner than later. But it's going to be really cool. It's brand new material, and you can't even believe the downloads coming through about it already. So I couldn't be more excited. I'm so happy to be back on mace.com. By the way, if you don't already know, Carolyn Mace and I are joining for a live in-person event in Santa Fe in November. And I just spoke to David Smith, our mutual business partner, and it's already half sold out. So, and we don't even have copy up on it yet, but it is on mace.com. If you're interested, you can go check it out and just trust the copy. The subject matter will be amazing, because it will. We know what we're doing. We just haven't had a chance to write copy. She's teaching a class right now. I'm teaching one next, and So Leslie Harding, wonderful. Vicky already registered. See what I'm saying? Half sold out. I'm so excited. I know for a lot of you who follow both of us, this is like your dream moment, and it's mine too, truly. I adore and love, and just, I don't have words for Carolyn Mace. It's gonna make me cry. It's how much I love her. Okay. As I progress forward with forgiveness for myself and others, does this also help those affected? Let me put this up real quick. I love that I can do that. So Barbara asks, as I progress forward with forgiveness for myself and others, does this also help those affected? Barbara, I'm not sure what your question relates to as far as like how others are affected. It's not real specific. I'm assuming you're saying as you forgive yourself and others, does that help those that are involved with you that maybe you have resentment for, or that you've, have harmed, that have resentment for you? Does it help them? Absolutely. In fact, I've seen that in my own personal life and just in the readings that that's very powerful. When you pivot around and you start to find ways to forgive, or you engage the process of mystical forgiveness as a journey, and you get further down the path, and that neutral space comes online, and maybe even gratitude starts pop its head up. Others, you just, I don't know, this is intuitive, but and psychic, you do feel like there's a shift. There just is. And I would teach it from this angle, actually. I think the shift is really about when we're in a forgiveness bind with somebody, when we're in that kind of yoked into something with them, that on a soul contract level, we have a, let's say, agreement around. Because that's, you got to know that those you have that you're struggling with forgiving, there's a soul contract there. There is an agreement. There is an agreed learning, expansion, and evolution there. Let me just name that because it's obvious, but maybe not. When you have fulfilled that, the magnetics with you and that other person immediately change. And then your general personal magnetics change as well. So yes, just take that. And how that change rolls depends. It might be just never talk to them again, and yet you're not bound in magnetics with them anymore. You have broken free, if you will, or I would just say neutralized or demagnetized the bond. Now, sometimes that means there's a joint coming together in the healing. That can happen too. And an almost reset of the intimacy and connection and relationship. That can happen. Sometimes it's both ends. You break apart and then come back together almost like you reincarnated, and you regroup on the path, and it's like, oh, yeah, things are, and you'll know the truth. The truth is energy never lies. So if you've really forgiven, if they've really forgiven, you're going to feel it. So yes, but it does bring, I love the truth, because it's not just an idea, that you're bringing healing to both people. Now, that's not your responsibility. That's a side effect. Your responsibility is to take care of your property, and your own heart and your own journey of forgiveness. But one of the wonderful side effects can be how it affects others. So I love that. Great question. Okay. All right. Well, listen, I'm going to go. I promised this would be 90 minutes, and look at us. Look at me. My gosh, 2 hours later, but so worth it, I hope. I'm going to take one more. This is because this is too good. Jill Angelo, what is going on? All of you, Jill Angelo is a dear friend of mine, and she takes care of rescue animals. Moondog Farm, not-for-profit, always looking for donations. Just saying, Jill. She rescues animals, and all kinds, pigs, I think hamsters, of course, cats, dogs. Haley Ballinger, I hope I said your name correctly. Do you think my psyche soul can let go of the pain without telling the harmer of their transgression? This is such a great question. Or is that open communication essential for healing? I don't think I can say either or here. I think both and. Of course. I think it's really going to depend on your process. For some people, you see all the time, and especially in like trials where someone's been murdered, and of course they're bringing their murderer to justice, and then it's sentencing, or before sentencing, usually, the victims or that lost the person to the murder get up and make a victim statement or an impact statement. And I would say that that I would understand to be essential for their journey of forgiveness and healing. Yes. Others don't do that or can't do that. And I'm just using that as a little extreme example. But when it gets to more nuanced personal stuff outside of murder and just, things that I think we more commonly experience with others and situations, events, and culture and society, do we have to go up to the transgressor and, let me just say, for some people that could be very damaging, because if there's any expectation or codependence on how that transgressor responds, you in danger, girl. If they decide, well, to harm you further, well, that's not so smart. So let me just say, let's say you were a battered spouse, and you get out of that. Eventually you leave with your life and kids intact, and then you're going through divorce, with the spouse and things progress to the separation, does that spouse need to go confront the violent, abusive spouse? Maybe, maybe not. I would say this. I would always, I would, because here, I'm wary to say, let me just technically speak. If we, and this isn't right or wrong, it doesn't mean it's not necessary either, but I want to technically speak. If we feel that we cannot move forward without first going through a bullet list of violations with those who have harmed us, that puts a lot of power into their hands. In fact, it puts the power for us to move forward at all, right? If I feel like I can't move forward till I tell you what you've done to me and I make you understand how harmful it was and how hurtful it was, of course, that's for many people a natural reflex once they get power coming into their system. So the battered spouse, once she starts or he starts to become more empowered, I call this post-esteem anger, by the way. I saw it in clients all the time. There's a tendency to want to go back to those when you lacked power and you couldn't tell them off, and finally now tell them off. Like, you hurt me and I didn't have enough esteem before to tell you about it, but now I do. So sit your ass down. Here we go. That's a natural, wonderful, actually, marker that more power is coming back to your system. And I call it post-esteem anger because you're pissed about transgressions and violations that happened before, post those violations. But now you got enough esteem and it makes you want to go back and say something because you didn't have enough esteem or empowerment before to say a thing. What I would take from that, just part one, is yay you. You feel good enough and empowered about yourself enough now to actually stand up for yourself. Awesome. Next evaluation is, well, great, I feel that way, but should I? And this is the key, what's the usefulness of it in my healing journey right now? Is it useful? What are the vulnerabilities? Could it be harmful to do that? And I think at some point, some party is going to know. Okay, so just know that. There's a party who's going to go, yeah, let's keep on walking. Or, yeah. I think it's more common to perhaps bring healing when it's family members. When you want to maybe finally express something to your parents or a sibling or spouse, that is typically, but if it's like a coworker or someone that was even a stranger that harmed you, it's really about what for you intuitively is true. Now, to get to that truth, it's tricky because your victim, in a sense of its entitled side, might want to go tell someone off all the time. But that may not be the most useful thing to do. So I know it seems like I'm evading the question, but I'm not really. I'm saying, listen, this is the way to read it for yourself, because that's ultimately what's going to need to be. There's no formula here. Sometimes it's really therapeutic and healing for people. In a courtroom, it's structured. It's contained in a certain way. So the person's able to come in safety, tell the murderer or aggressor or whatever, hey, you did this. This is how it's affected me. This is how my family's been shattered. These are the pieces we're picking up, but it's contained. It's administered. So there's a safety there. When it comes to interpersonal stuff, there's more vulnerability. So I say this, especially because there's a lot to sort through in this arena. This is just generally a good way to roll intuitively with yourself. If you're not sure, wait until you get something that's consistent over time. I think I need to say something. I'm not sure could actually open me up to more harm. I'm not sure I'm really ready to come out. I'm still scaffolding and strengthening. Yeah, you may not be ready. And it could blow up on you and demolish what scaffolding had been built, truly. But you can know for yourself if you're ready or not, or if it's even necessary. So, having said that, both and, I'm going to offer, let's just assume this as a possibility, that any and all violations and transgressions can be, I'm not saying they will be, but can be, there's potential for them to self-resolve, meaning you can do it in your own journey. You know, in AA, you know, which I know all too well from my family history, there is a sense of when someone's going through the step of making amends, of using a certain discernment as to whether or not you go actually apologize to people for the stuff you did while you were in active addiction, because sometimes it just resurfaces the trauma and it's more harmful. So for them, it's a resurfacing and retriggering of things. For you, it's unloading your conscience and, you know, making amends. So there's always this thing, well, making amends, we're welcome. And if you can't make amends, we're welcome, because you assess, look, I can't go apologize to them. It's just going to reactivate their trauma that I did to them. So now what? And in AA, they say, well, make it a living amends. So now, you know what I need to do? I need to go live differently, make different choices so that I never do that to someone again. That's my apology. And they don't even have to ever hear it from my mouth. But on my soul's record, on my karmic record from here, those are the amends I will live. So maybe something to import from that into answering your question as well. You know, maybe it's really about, hey, ultimately, your journey of self-empowerment is your journey. We do need each other as part of getting stronger on that. We do not do this alone. We do need greater power. Yes, that's true too. But I think it's about the intention and where that's coming from in you. If you feel like you have to tell the harmer in your words, I would say, well, my first question to you, Haley, would be, well, why? Why do you need to tell them? How would that help? Let's hang out there in those questions for a minute. Let's see what part of you answers them. Am I hearing your inner child? Am I hearing your victim? Am I hearing your shadow victim? Am I hearing a part of your soul? Am I hearing them all? And that's where we have to sort through it, you know? And when we get sorted, something consistent will emerge. So that's a great question, because I'm sure we all have that, you know, I've asked that too. I mean, for sure. And there's some people that I still ask that about, actually. Not even from both sides, even. Should I make an amends to them? I don't know. You know, should it be in a living amends? What would that mean? Should I go, hey, this is, you know, let's talk about what happened? Or do we just move on? And when it starts to come back to, maybe this is another social life, how do you get to resolution? How do we finally get to true? We got true forgiveness, but now how do we get to true resolution? And there's a bridge between them. Great question. All right. Okay. Well, all right. I'm really going to go. So thank you all for coming. And I hope this helps. Please, please, please. We need more forgiveness of this kind in the world, I would say. Share this around. You know, if you can, if you have people you know that would benefit from it, I think this is going to be very beneficial to lots of people you might know. I would appreciate you sharing it around and just spreading the love. You know, so I will see you next Friday. I'm going to do another social live. Now, the topic I'm not naming yet, but I will be here. And we're going to be doing some consistent social lives for a bit until I have to teach the course on mace.com. So I'll see you next Friday with some other good stuff. And leave comments, feedback underneath the post, the video. I can't wait to read it later. And take care of yourself. And, you know, self-forgiveness. I want to close with the gift of that. Because it really is a gift we give ourselves. And forgiving others is a gift we give ourselves. But we don't wrap that gift in thoughts of forgiveness or with our mind. We have to truly, in the end, for the holism of it all to come full circle, wrap those gifts with the wrapping paper of the cosmic heart that can encompass it all. And I mean it all. Your gritty ass human messy life and all you've been through, but also the heavenly, soulful, energetic realm from whence you came, and the contracts you have that were formed there. All of it. That's how big and amazing and badass, if you will, the cosmic heart is. So wrap those gifts of forgiveness up with that cosmic heart as best you can, and let that be your true north, truly. I think that's what I would end on as the perhaps most optimal way to ignite and continue on your journey of forgiveness. Namaste.